Now, where does Vitskar Suden come from? That's like the number two question I've gotten from people
Right.
knowing that I'm going to talk to you.
Um, we set out to conceive a band name that is unpronounceable to many and unspellable by most. No, we were. That is kind of what happened, but we were just playing one night back before we were a real band that intended to release new music, and we were. I was listening to a lot of Swedish stoner rock and Swedish stoner metal at the time, and so whatever I was doing on bass that night or whatever we wound up doing sounded very Swedish stoner rocky. And so as we were taking a break from playing and standing around chatting like we always do, I was talking about that, and someone was like, "We should have a Swedish band name." And so then we started Googling all things Swedish, and we found this rocky beach called Vitskar Suden. I think it's Sudden, and it's all one word. So we kind of took that and chopped it up and added an extra umlaut in there, and I think there was also a piece of IKEA furniture called Vitskar at some point.
This is awesome.
And so it just became a sort of a goof for us that's what we were, but not. And the other funny thing was that all the bands I was listening to had very American sounding names, like Lowrider and Dozer and Truck Fighters and all these things that sounded very like kind of macho American names. So I thought that was even more interesting that, we would be the American band with the Swedish band name. And then when it came time to put the first album together, when we got serious about that, we were like, I thought we were going to be Vitskar Suden. And then some of the other guys were like, okay, what are we going to call ourselves for real? I was like, Vitskar Suden. And Christopher the drummer and I were like, we're Vitskar Suden. And they're like, I don't know. And so we started making these lists of band names. And if you've ever tried to name something,
Oh, yes.
and with a group of people, like a club
Yes.
or a band or a group or anything, and everybody starts making their list of suggestions, it is the most terrible thing you could find yourself stuck in the middle of. So I was working on the first Godzilla, or not the first Godzilla, the Godzilla versus Kong. Then I was in Hawaii, and we were trading all these emails, and it was going back and forth, and people were making lists, and they were all very like, we looked back at them, and they were like, we can't be called like, Orc Hammer or something like that. It was like
Right.
we were very like dipping into this sort of D&D realm with the names, and it was getting a little ridiculous and didn't seem very representative of the whole picture of what we were doing. And so at some point, Christopher and I convinced our guitar players that, look, we are Vitskar Students. What our music is to us, when we hear that, that's what we think of as our music. And yes, it's going to be impossible to Google, but we can guarantee that we can get the URL, because no one else is going to have this band name out there, and it's not going to be confused with anybody else, because we're not going to have, Witch or Lord or Green or all these other names that get sort of mixed up on these other bands. Like, it'll be a unique name. Once people figure out what we are and they can pronounce it however they want to pronounce it, then it will mean us to them.